Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing on Monday, the 5th of June. Sorry for some technical difficulties in the Clark household, Derek, that leaves me uncomfortably in the hosting chair. But Derek, you're joining us. You're going to be giving us more insight than you usually do. Is that right?
Yeah, it's good to have you on the Oki, Joshua. Yeah, a few issues with the old laptop this morning. Hopefully they'll be resolved. I've phoned IT, so I'm getting them onto it. Hopefully that'll be sorted for the days ahead. But yeah, good to be on in this guest chair. What's it like, Stevie, being a guest?
I've already got my overtime claim and I'm in no mood for the niceties. You know what I mean? 22 minutes I've been hanging about. I'm a busy man. You know what I mean? It's difficult when you're as famous as me. You know what I mean?
Well, in light of that, let's crack on, Stevie, as you say. Remember, at the moment, folks, you can get 3 to 5 new and exclusive extra videos a week if you sign up to the Rangers Review on YouTube, as is going along the ticker below by joining our new members group. As well, you can subscribe to the website. The links for that are in the description. And remember that today's video, as ever, is brought to you by Seneca, the #1 place for hair restoration in all of Europe, as Derek reminds you every day. But it's me today. Do go and check them out if that is something that you are looking for. Right, guys, a relatively quiet weekend in the world of Rangers, I guess. A couple of signings already in the door. We know that there's more to come. I want to start today, as people get their comments in, by talking about some quotes that came out over the weekend about Kemar Roofe and Tom Lawrence. I'll just read them out. They're on the website. Michael Beale said, we decided for Roofe to go and have the hip operation that has been troubling him for a long period of time now, to see if that solves the issues he has been having. He's back out and running now, so he will start pre-season with the team. Him and Tom, I've not really been able to use either of them. I've not even seen Tom in training. Tom is probably 3 or 4 weeks behind Kemar. That'll be nice for him because last year he started pre-season and had an issue within the first 2 days. So let's see where we're at. He was our top scorer in the year we won the league, but it's important he shows when he comes back that he can be the player we know. I do feel for him. We had a long conversation. He goes on to speak about Phil Hollander, who missed obviously games for Rangers and the international as well. It continues on Roofe. It's not easy with a family away from home. Kemar has a young family that were originally based in England. They're here now and they're here to see their dad play football. He's a really strong-willed guy, Kemar, with a really tough exterior, but you have got to make sure that he's in a good place. I think being out in the pitch and being pain-free is a big step for him. So let's see how pre-season goes. Now, Stevie, I'll come to you first. Roofe is a kind of conversation that I feel like we've had this conversation a lot of times. Put it this way, this kind of feels like in a way it's a last chance saloon because he's had that operation. He's been taken out of the squad for the final couple months of the season to have that. What do you make of those quotes? Is it a case for you of until you actually see Kemar Roofe out there consistently, there's not much to report?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Kemar Roofe's a smashing footballer. I really do. There's an argument, especially in the last few years, that he's been our best forward option. Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. Every game that he comes on, he makes a difference. Every game that he plays, he makes a difference. I don't think any of that is revolutionary. I don't think it's, I don't think it's been favourable to him. I think that's just the facts of when he plays. Kemar Roofe's a good player. Problem is, Kemar Roofe doesn't play, Joshua. So he's not dependable. He may have a hard exterior and stuff like Michael Beale points out, but he's certainly not got a hard body because it's the slightest knock is, and we see him, he's out for months. So he's either been extremely unlucky or he's not got the appetite for it, or a bit of both. I'm not sure, but he's got to prove all that again. Yeah. I don't think it's unfair of a support to have a bit of trepidation when it comes to Kemar Roofe and being able to rely on him. I don't think there's anybody out there who doesn't think he's a good footballer, who doesn't think he's a good finisher, but simply just doesn't trust him in regards to his fitness. Now, I completely agree. This is last chance saloon. He's got a year left. Yeah. I see, to be quite honest with you, unless he has a fantastic year, Rangers shouldn't be considering in any way renewing a contract for Kemar Roofe. So he's got it all to prove this year. There's no doubt in my mind that if he can stay fit, he can make a big impact. But for me, Kemar Roofe is already third, fourth choice with it all to prove again, regardless of how good he is, because we simply have to manage and see where he is fitness-wise. So I appreciate the comments by Beale. He's got to, he's got to answer the questions and stuff like that. And I realise it makes headlines and things, but I think Rangers, if given the opportunity, would move him on just simply because of his injury history. However, I don't think that's possible.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anybody would be near him. So we have to try and make it work. So I understand that he's on a pretty high wage as well. I am glad his family have moved up. I hope that makes a difference for him. And I really hope that for him, he does kick on. But I have my doubts of whether or not we can depend on him at all, Joshua.
Derek, I'll put this to you then. We had a piece on the website, I think it was one of the newsletters last week, that was looking at the appearances Roof made in his first 2 seasons compared to last season. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was something like 36, 30 appearances and then 6. So there was a way in the first 2 seasons to manage Roof. And I think if you look at when he got injured under Gio, I believe it was after the Cup semi-final when he played against Braga the week before as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stevie or Derek. But he played and he scored obviously that extra time winner against Braga and then went and played that whole Old Firm game as well. So maybe he just played too much football. But there was quite a chunk of time as well where he was in the squad, but he just wasn't favoured. You think of him coming on against Aberdeen to score that winner by way of a kind of a deflection and a 1-0 win. Is there an argument, Derek, that if Rangers can use him as they did in the first 2 seasons, that he is still an asset? Because I think with a player like Roof, and maybe it's similar to someone like Helander, they've got so much quality that if they didn't have injury issues, they probably wouldn't be playing in Scotland. So is this just the reality of what happens when you get a player like Roof in at the club?
Yeah, I think the reality is he's unreliable, isn't he? I mean, there's a few false dawns last season when he came back and almost get injured 5 minutes in. You mentioned the Aberdeen game he delivered, of course. He scored against, was it Livingston as well? I'm right in thinking, in the away game over there. But listen, he spent too long on the treatment table for me. If Rangers can get a tune out of him, because they're not going to sell him to anybody, I can't imagine there'll be a queue of clubs wanting to take him off Rangers' hands. He's on a decent wage as well, so I'd be amazed if he was to head to another club in the summer. So I think Rangers are going to have to try and get some sort of tune out of him. I won't hold my breath for Kemar Roof next season. I think it's clear that Rangers need to bolster the striking department, and by all accounts, that is what they're looking to do. I think if Roof can play a part, great, but they can't be relying on him next season. I think Sakala, I'd imagine he'll be sticking around as well. These are squad players for me that can come in now and again and do a job. Sakala, obviously more so than Roof, given his fitness. But yeah, it seems like we've heard this many times before on Kemar Roof, haven't we? He's been so unfortunate and unlucky with injuries, but Rangers need someone reliable and robust up front. I think everyone has had a bit sick with the injuries that the squad have sustained last season. So hopefully we've got a less eventful season ahead of us in terms of players being out long-term injured. So Lawrence is another one. Lawrence is one I'm excited about because that is a really unfortunate, unique injury that he suffered. I think we're all in agreement. All Rangers fans were excited to see him in the first few weeks of his Rangers career. He looked the real deal. And then, of course, we've not seen him since the back end of August. I really hope he can get up and running quickly. We'll be playing catch-up, of course, with the players that will be starting pre-season a few weeks before him. But if he can get back to the level that he was at when he started last season, then I think that'll be, well, the old cliche, it'll be like a new signing. But he's the one I'm excited to see him back again.
Yeah, and we'll absolutely get on to Tom Lawrence as well. Just a few comments on Roof. Russell says, I'm sorry, but you can't rely on him. Fantastic striker. We need to get rid of players we can't have on the field. Tam Brown saying, keep Roof for Europe. He can't play more than once a week, day in a life. I think he will. He's a goal scorer. That's when he's fit. And Dave Fulton saying, fingers crossed, Roof surgery was a success. We saw the benefits of doing the same with Jack, and his calf surgery takes time to recover, but seems to have solved the issue. Stevie, just on the topic of strikers, I mean, there's loads of links to Rangers at the moment, obviously, because it's that time of the season. We've talked about this a little bit, but I think if you consider the type of striker that Michael Beale wants. The reason that Roof's been such a favourite of his, even though he's been out injured so much, is because he is that kind of hybrid profile of player who can drop in, who can be the kind of last line striker. He gives you different options. When you think of the type of profile of striker that Michael Beale is going to bring into the club this summer, what comes to mind? Because for me, it is a player like Roof or Sakala who they don't just do one thing. They're able to kind of contribute in lots of different ways. And I think increasingly as well, we'll maybe see those wide forwards that we did on the final day of the season. We'll see Beale play with those type of players more and more often.
This is a difficult question, but it all comes down to one thing, Joshua. We need to find killers. We need to find guys that will not blink twice about putting the ball in the net, and will not think about anything, will not hesitate, just naturally will pull the trigger. Now, these guys cost a lot of money, so I get it. I get that it's going to be really difficult to find, but Rangers need to find 2, possibly 3 forwards type wingers that are going to contribute and going to get goals. If you're playing in a Ryan Kent kind of situation, position where he's been under Beale and things like that, then you need to be hitting Sakala numbers. That's a reality of it. And you need your number 9, where Alfredo's been playing, to hit 25 goals. Now, if we want to be a Premier League, winning team, that's what we need to find. So with regards to what type of player that we want to bring in, we need somebody possibly that's strong, that can hold up the ball, that can use his body and strength and be able to feed. Because we're going to have runners. I think that's fair. When you look at like Cantwell, Cifuentes hopefully coming in, these boys are going to run off. And you've seen quite a lot. Beale's teams were using Morelos to hold it up and play off him. You've seen Cantwell do it quite a few times. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're going for a forward, somebody with that kind of strength behind them. And then you'll have the other option, which I think is a Defoe type, who's just a good old-fashioned finisher. Plays, on the line, basically on the back line, looks for the ball to run on to finish and stuff like that. So I think there's 2 options there we might be looking at to go for. Roof is more closer, I think, to the Morelos type, where he can hold it up and use his strength, but Roof can finish. There's no doubt Kemar Roof's a finisher. We've seen that. And even in those Livingston and the Aberdeen semi-final at Hampden, we've seen the difference that he can make. So he can have an impact. But I just think, like Derek says, he's unreliable in that there's always that moment you're basically waiting on him being out again and breaking down. So I still think, regardless of Cholak, regardless of Roof, we need 2 forwards coming in, 2 goal scorers, and then we need wide men as well. So it doesn't kind of surprise me how we've done our business tying up Sterling, getting Dowell in. Jack Butland will arrive in the next couple of days. So that doesn't surprise me in the slightest that we've done business like that. But I think the money, and I think that, the proper, maybe not proper signings, that's maybe not on, but the money and the quality has got to be spent up front. I think that's got to be, and we have to make sure that we've got those goal scorers. Yeah. So I think they were linked with the boy Cremonese in Italy, the Nigerian boy. Now that's quite interesting for me, lads, because he's got a good pedigree. I think last season he had 10 goals in the Europa Conference for Feyenoord, which is, you can say what you want about the Conference League, but it's still a good level. 7 in Serie A this year for a really struggling team is good goal scoring levels, 1 in 3 more or less. That's the kind of signing. 28, 29, I think he's just turned. That's the kind of signing that I'm interested in. £6 million they paid from last year. We'll obviously not pay that. We're looking to batter that down. But he's an interesting link for me. That's the kind of boy that has got enough experience and things like that you want to bring somebody in. I still have got the opinion that Michael Beale will try and get a Jermaine Defoe type striker in the door. Now, I don't have those names at hand, I think, but I think that's an interesting option when he talks about older players and experience and stuff like that. I think he'll try and get somebody like that in the door as well. So I think that's where your dynamic is going to be, Joshua. I think that's the kind of pairing we're going to be looking at. I'm not saying necessarily going to get this Nigerian boy, but he just seems like he's a very interesting option for me. When I read it last night, I went and looked him up and googled him a wee bit, and a boy's a player. He's one that's maybe again came down slightly, looking to rise his profile again. That's our remit. That's our catchment area. So he's an interesting link.
He looks a big physical player as well, Stevie. I done a bit. I looked at him as well last night when I seen the reports around him, and he looks not like Morelos, but he's got that sort of stature about him. He can fend off a defender. Not a big lump, but if you like, he can play a bit as well. So yeah, that is one I was keen on looking at last night. Of course, he's played with Aribo and Bassi as well for Nigeria. So. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, let's hope they'll be in his ear if that rumour is correct. But it's interesting to see Rangers are reportedly looking at these guys. Like you say, he's been playing in Serie A for a team that's been struggling. Feyenoord, he did well there, of course, when they made it all the way to the final, didn't they? And then they lost out to Roma in that final. So, yeah, I think, like you say, Joshua, there will be a number of names. We know that the Bordeaux striker, Josh Maja, has been heavily linked in the past as well. So I'm sure those two aren't going to be the only names that are going to be linked with a move to Ibrox this summer.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that we're going to cover this on one of the members' videos on the YouTube channel later this week. But if you look at the profile of striker, if you look at the way Beale's used the strikers so far, I think it will be more of those two wide forwards with, a Cantwell breaking from midfield, or it was Kent earlier in the season. It's been Tillman at points as well. And I think it's interesting if you look at the certain links, who fits with that mould of a player who isn't just going to be a hold-up player, but is also going to be able to turn and run in behind. When Beale was speaking about Cholak the other week, he referenced the fact that he wants kind of all of his players involved in all aspects of the game, and that obviously extends to the strikers and what he's going to do with that as he evolves the tactics up top as well. Matthew Ross agreeing in the members chat, saying a finisher with pace, that's all I want. I think a lot of people would agree with you there, Matthew. And Xander Staff saying, morning gents, hopefully an exciting weekend ahead with some fun announcements. Again, I think everyone would agree with that. Right, Derek, let's speak about Tom Lawrence, because I know you and Johnny absolutely love him. I think Lawrence will be a really impactful player for Rangers when he does get back up and fit. We've not really seen that much of him. What we've seen has been good. I don't think he's going to be the best signing that Rangers have ever made. But equally, the numbers he'll probably provide for you at the top end of the pitch, if he can get over these injury issues, will hopefully help over the course of a domestic season. He's going to be a little bit behind the roof, Derek, but again, having him back ready and available for the new season, how big a boost is that going to be for Beale?
Yeah, again, it depends. I mean, he's been out long term. It's going to be almost a year he's been out, so pretty similar to Yanis Hadji. We can't expect him to be the Tom Lawrence he was prior to his injury. So I think there's going to have to be an element of patience there for him to get back up to speed. I hope he gets back to the level that he was showing, as I mentioned, when he first joined. I watched him a few times playing for Derby. Seen him score beauties every time I watched him. So I thought it was a terrific signing last summer. Unfortunately, of course, that injury turned out to be longer than everyone thought at the time, and would have hoped. I think that what the initial prognosis was around New Year, and then he get pushed back to February. I think he broke down in training or what have you, and then it's been pushed back to the back end of pre-season. So he's been really unfortunate. I feel for the lad, because he's a top player, and he'll be itching to get back on the field and play for Rangers. I just hope, as I mentioned, that Rangers take their time with him. I hope that, as Stevie said, they're going to be bringing in reinforcements in midfield. So Fuentes looks at a decent proposition if they bring him in. I'd imagine there'll be one or two more perhaps in that midfield area, and that's an area I'm not too concerned with. I think Rangers are pretty strong in there. Of course, we've got Cantwell, Raskin in there already. Remains to be seen what's going to happen with Lundstrom and Kamara. I'd imagine Kamara will be on his way. So you've got Jack in there as well, of course. So it's not an area that Rangers really need him back pronto. But yeah, I think an element of patience with regards to Tom Lawrence. If he can play a part next season, then absolutely superb.
Stevie, Tom Lawrence, I think one of the qualities that probably stands out from Tom Lawrence, watching him over those first few games, is he does look like a player who's quite happy to take responsibility and be a leader in that team. I don't think he's someone who's going to come in and be phased. I think he'll, play a risky pass when there's pressure on at Ibrox. Always remember PSV away when he tried that shot that came off the crossbar just in a kind of quieter moment of the game. And that's what you need. And with Cantwell in particular, I think you've seen the importance, and Raskin, the importance of character to be a successful signing at Rangers. I mean, I know we spoke about it before, but kind of in light of those quotes, Tom Lawrence, what do you make of the impact that he could have next season?
Well, it was interesting when Derek says that he thinks maybe one or two more would come in midfield. I don't see that. I basically see a midfield of Cantwell, Raskin, Jack, Lundstrom, Lawrence, and then you're looking at maybe Cifuentes coming in. I think
what if Tillman doesn't come back then, Stevie?
I still don't think that. I don't think Tillman really makes a difference. I don't think you would see him. I think Cifuentes is more or less your one that replaces Tillman. We'll need to see what happens with that. I'm not sure that. I think if Tillman was coming back, we'd know about it already. So I'm not closing the door on it, but I'm just saying it's not looking likely. I don't think there's a need to add if he doesn't come in. If we add Cifuentes, I think that really you've got your two base then of Jack and Lundstrom, and then you've got four really different. Raskin can play that role as well. So when you look at the numbers of the squad that Michael Beale wants, that's why I'm kind of thinking that's maybe the midfield. But as for Tom Lawrence, I thought Tom Lawrence was superb last season and what we got to see of him, which was only, albeit, 5-6 weeks. Really liked the look of him. Somebody that could take a shot, somebody that had that ability as well, which I think is really important to arrive in the box later, like different. Look at his goal at Hibs when he scored that header. He times his runs really nicely, and that's a different dynamic from midfield, similar to what Scott Arfield used to bring us. And I think he's a nice all-round player, can play a few positions, can carry the ball, can sit, add that bit of steel as well. I'm not concerned about Tom Lawrence in any way with regards to what he'll add to the squad or if he's going to come back or things like that. We'll need to be patient with him. He will need a decent kind of run and fitness and stuff like that before he kind of gets back to it. But Tom Lawrence will play a part definitely for Rangers. I'm not sure he's maybe a starter. I think he'll be one that needs to push himself into the first team under Michael Beale. But he's an excellent option to have. And the good thing with having Cantwell and Raskin already in, Jack and Lundstrom as a base there, that you can take your time with Lawrence, you can take your time with Cifuentes and stuff like that. If he comes in, then, you've got time to kind of bed these guys in. But Tom Lawrence will play his part for Rangers. I think that's a definite thing. I think he'll be a good player for us as well. It's really just up to... I'm reluctant to kind of lob loads of pressure on him just because it's such a bad injury. And that kind of just sums up our season. I remember I asked Van Bronckhorst in that press conference, and he said, no, he's fine. It's just a twisted knee. And before you knew it, that twisted knee was him out to February. Then he comes back in February. Or he comes back, before that. Was it not? I remember Van Bronckhorst, I think, said in November that he'd had a setback in the training just before he ended up getting binned. So, that just shows how unlucky. You think about the difference that Tom Lawrence and, Kamar Roof and John Souttar would have made to that team. And then it's obvious to say why our season kind of went down the pan with so many injuries like it was. So a lot of quality missed out last year. Tom Lawrence is definitely one that can make a difference, that's for sure. And he's a goal scorer. He will get you 10 goals, which those 10 goals is absolutely vital when you look at not being one you would rely on, but you need guys that are going to chip in. And if he chips in with 10, like we hope Cantwell will chip in with 10, then these guys, that's the 10 that are going to make, these are the ones that are going to make you title winners and stuff like that. If you can add the forwards and get these guys chipping in, then you're going to be there or thereabouts.
Just on Cifuentes, he played. I know there was talk that there would be that move might materialise after, of course, the CONCACAF Champions League final. They did play that second leg against Lyon earlier in the early hours of this morning. Lost 1-0, lost 3-1 in aggregate. He came on as a sub Cifuentes in that game. So we may see some movement now with that game out of the way. I know that LAFC are keen on getting a bit of money in because they can lose them at the end of the year for nothing. So they'll be keen to get in whatever sort of money they can do at this moment in time. So there may be a bit of movement on that, I'd imagine.
I don't think it's unreasonable, Derek, to expect him to be on a plane immediately, still in his strip. He can get changed on the flight, get over here ASAP. Then he can get a good 4 weeks rest, and then back for pre-season. So yeah, I'm like you. I think and would hope that deal would speed up now. I mean, I don't have any sort of inside knowledge in it, but from the reports and things like that, I think that when Fabrizio Romano and stuff start speaking about it, that's when you know that there's proper solid interest in there. So he's an interesting one. I think he's going to be a good player for Rangers if he comes as well. And I think, again, he adds that something from midfield, the ability to break forward, that powerfulness, that running. It goes back to what we said last week, Derek. These boys that they're bringing in, athletic guys, legs, all runners, all energy. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were to get Cifuentes, I'm still very much on the side of the fence that would get Tillman back in a heartbeat. But you have got a lot of options in that midfield, because what you have with someone like Raskin is obviously these players can play different positions. Some games Cantwell's going to play deeper and kind of knit the team together. Some games you're going to see Raskin, I think, at the base of midfield when you need a technician to take the ball under pressure and really control the midfield on and off the ball. But he can also play higher if that's the requirement. And if it's a Lundstrom or Jack, they'll often form a back three, as we've seen at points. I think that's worth a separate discussion at points, because if you look at how Beale's used the back three, I think it's a positive attacking move, allowing his centre-backs to step up and almost play one at the back at points as opposed to three. But that's a video for another day. But looking at that squad there, Stevie, I mean, you had your piece on your column last Friday on the website, kind of making a bit of a guesstimate at how many more players come in. Beale has said quite often that the squad box to box has been fine since he's come into the club, and I think that's fair. You look at the players that Rangers have there, that's a fair judgment. Over the past few seasons, what's really let them down, I think, has consistently been the lack of a difference maker in goals over the last couple of seasons, in the way that Al McGregor's numbers showed he did in the last title winning season. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, a kind of a lack of killers in the box, if you will, a lack of number of players who are able to make a real difference. The talk of a rebuild was always, I think, focused on rebuilding that spine of the squad, which has happened. If you look at the players that are going and players that are starting to come in, that is obviously underway. But it is important, I guess, to point out, as you did in your column last week, that there is still a lot of redeemable qualities within that squad, that you just need a new core and a rebuild to maybe get the best out of it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I'm on record as saying that only really Raskin and Cantwell are safe because they've come in January. I think Rangers are in a position where a big money come in from any other players that they would offer, that they would look at it. Now, I'm not saying necessarily they would deal, obviously, Tavernier, Goldson and things like that. That becomes your core. Guys like Jack, Lundstrom and things, you'll want them to stay. So I still think the numbers that we talked about last week, between 16 and 18 of the squad staying and 8 coming in, I think that takes you to where Michael Beale wants it to be. That would be 3 goalkeepers and then 22, 23 outfield players, which is 2 for every position. You'll have hybrid players in there that can play a few positions and things like that, like Lundstrom can sit in, Dowell can play right in the middle, left and stuff. So he'll like players like that will give him options. I still think that's where they're going to be. Interesting one, I was nodding away when you were talking about Tillman. I think the position with Tillman, look, I think everybody would say, if we can get a deal done and batter a deal down for that, £4 or £5 million, every single person would be like, right, great, let's get him in. Because I still think that Malik Tillman, I still think we scratched the surface somewhat there. I think that, once he comes properly, if he was to come properly and settle in and properly, be here and stuff like that, I think he can give more as well. He went through an incredible spell January, February time when, he was just unstoppable. Then obviously get injured and things like that, and kind of dipped. So you also get that other conundrum, Joshua, of if you add better players around him, then he'll become a better player. And we already seen what he could do with virtually nothing up front. No disrespect to the boys that were there, Kent, Morelos and stuff, right? And I don't want to go down the route of criticising them, but either by form or by attitude or whatever, they weren't present. They weren't in their game this last season. And certainly from the turn of the year, these boys were affected by what was going on around them. So we didn't have much going on up front for Malik Tillman to play off and hit. You seen he thrived a wee bit when Cantwell and Raskin came in and made the difference. You imagine what a Tillman has when he's got proper forwards to hit in front of him. And then he's running off of them and he's, you know, and then he's playing in front of your Cantwells, Raskins, Cifuentes, whoever else, you know. So I think Tillman, you know, we don't close the door on that one. I think that anyone that can score the kind of goals that he did and be available for that kind of money, we're not losing money on that investment. I don't think there's any danger you're losing money on that investment. If we had him last summer for 4 million, you'd be looking at doubling maybe 10 million odd this summer if teams were interested. So he's an interesting one. When I spoke about him earlier, what I was trying to get at is it wasn't a resignation of he's not coming, but it's more of I'm not counting on it. Does that make sense? I'm not convinced.
It might not definitely happen. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point, Stevie. And again, there's a whole other morning briefing this week, I think, in Tillman. Just a couple of comments on it. Brian saying he could be a real difference maker and a better functioning team. Obviously, you're saying you've only scratched the surface with him. It's his first season, isn't it? So that's always going to be the case. And Tillman saying, Dave saying Tillman's work rate and fight for the ball out of possession definitely improved in the second half of the season. I mean, Tillman himself spoke about that, but it's just a young player learning the professional game, isn't it? By the end of the season, his pressing stats were I think some of the best in the team. All he was I think a certain performance away from ticking every box. Rangers didn't have many, if any, big game performers, I think, until Cantwell right at the end of the season last season. But an absolute no-brainer for me. Derek, just get your view on it before we close up the show. I mean, as mentioned, we'll probably do a whole segment on it later this week. But Tillman, if the option is there, do you have any doubt in your mind?
I can understand why there is doubts amongst some of the fan base. Of course, the Celtic games is the reason why they wouldn't part with what's reported to be £5 million for his services. I can understand that, but I don't necessarily buy he doesn't turn up in big games. I think he showed that at the start of the season against PSV Union Saint-Gilloise, who incidentally, I don't know if you boys seen at the end of that Belgian season, absolutely unbelievable. Toby Alderweireld will be an absolute beauty to win the league for Royal Antwerp, and it changed hands.
With his bad foot as well.
With his bad foot, beauty. Yeah. Yeah, it was a Sergio Aguero moment for him. It's his hometown club and everything. So, yeah, well done to them. But, yeah, listen, Union Saint-Gilloise are a top side as well. At the time, we didn't think that. Of course, but they went really, really deep in the Europa League, of course, and almost won the league again yesterday. So that was a big game that Malik turned up in. Don't think anyone really, apart from, of course, at the game a couple of weeks ago at Ibrox, which was I know it was important to get that monkey off the back and beat Celtic, but I would like to see Rangers win the games that matter next season. And if Malik comes back, then the onus will be on him and others to turn up in these games. So I would bring him if the money's there, Joshua. And I think Michael Beale has said it himself. He'd love to work with them more. It's whether Malik wants to come back and play in Scotland again. That's I think it's going to be his decision at the end of the day. And I think, Stevie, you mentioned it last week or the week before. If the player is deliberating over whether to come to Rangers or not, then he's not the right player, I don't think. You want to bite the hand to come over at Rangers. I know he's at Bayern Munich, but if you're not sure about coming to Rangers, then I'm not entirely sure Rangers is the club for you.
Yeah, I still think that's fair, but you know, just I'm looking at more what he was able to do in the first in his first season with not a lot around him. So it's an interesting. I don't listen. I think I'm on record as saying I don't think it'll happen. I'm still of the same I'm still of the same kind of opinion that I don't see it. But if it's possible, we can do a deal in any way, and he's up for it and he wants to come, those kind of numbers, better players around him, then I think it works. I do think the money's there. I do think, but then it doesn't leave much of a budget for anybody else. I think if he comes in £5 million, you're looking at £5 or £6 million left with, having to sell. You're going to get a couple of million for Kamara. You're going to maybe get £1 million for Scott Wright or whatever. So these are the kind of deals we'll have to do then. It's a difficult one. It's up to Beale, I think, to balance. But, if you're talking about a guy that can get 20 goals from that position and kind of make the influence that he can, and then hopefully, as I said, I still think there's a lot more to come. I don't think you're buying Malik Tillman and thinking that the last season's the best you're going to get out of him.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one. I know. Obviously, Joshua is a huge fan of Malik Tillman, but interestingly enough, Joshua and I used to debate this and talk about this a lot. His turnovers and ball recovery, Joshua, is massive, isn't it? For the number that he done in our team. So there's that side of it as well. And if you start to put better forwards in front of him, and I do think, and I've rabbited on, Luke, about this a lot over this last couple of months, and I really do think that Rangers team under Michael Beale, when you look at the outlay he was getting from his forwards and position, Kent, Morelos, and that, your big players, it's been next to nothing since he came in. So, I think maybe Morelos is anywhere between 7 or 8 or something, numbers-wise. Kent, not worth writing home about. Sakala's the only one really that's pitched in, and he's been in and out of the team. Antonio Cholak's not been available. If you get those players, if you get those goal scorers in, and that has to be key to this summer, and the other players are able to do it around them, then we're going to be in a really good position. And that's the key. That's the key for us this summer, is getting those forwards, getting those key killer players that are going to get those numbers. And then if you look at the other business, Dowell, Sterling, Butland hopefully arriving, Cifuentes, you get these guys in having spent £1 million. That's incredibly smart business. Get the forwards in, and this will be a completely different Rangers team.
Yeah, well, as mentioned, Stevie, that's one of the topics that we'll visit on the members video. So do sign up, folks, for just $2.99. We'll absolutely look at Tillman, his numbers on and off the ball, amongst other things, later at some point this week, or if not next week. Until then, thanks everyone
Can I just jump in, Josh? I just want to say thanks. I went to this World Rangers Supporters Club. I went to. They had an event on Friday night, so I was invited over. They had Mark Hateley down. So big thanks to Jamie, Tom, and everyone there at the Supporters Club. An absolutely sensational little venue they've got there, and a great club. It's growing all the time. So it was fantastic to go down there. Great wee night had by all. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. I know they watch the show, so superb. If you're in and around that area, folks, and it's well worth a visit.
Yeah, and fear not, Derek will be back in his righteous place of the hosting chair tomorrow.
Well, I hope so. We've got IT issues, folks. Hence why I was in the guest chair today. So hopefully we'll get it rectified for tomorrow and going forward. But certainly a different dynamic sitting in this side of the side of the screen, Stevie.
Are you? Did you not get an email back from IT saying have you turned it off and turned it back on again?
Right.
I've not had that yet, but I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah, on that note. Right. Well, hopefully we'll be back in top shape for tomorrow. Until then, thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we'll speak to you soon.